This fintech landscape has grown substantially over the last 10 years, and it's led by South Africa, Kenya, and Nigeria. So what makes these countries arguably the central point for the growth of fintech in sub-Saharan Africa? Joining me now to unpack this is Ashwin Gulab, who's a partner financial services in Africa at EY. Ashwin, many thanks for your time this evening. Perhaps give us an overview of what a fintech is and really the trends that we're seeing in sub-Saharan Africa in terms of their growth.
Good evening, and thank you very much for having me, Rafiwi. I think a fintech can be regarded as a startup organization, typically started by an entrepreneur, that provides innovative financial services, and by that I mean services that are traditionally provided by bank or insurance companies, using digital technology at a significantly lower price point than incumbent institutions, with a brilliant customer experience. Now, if you look at the fintech story, we had about 30 of those in 2007, and as at mid last year, the number rose to 262, which is roughly the 24% compound annual growth. And the main driving force behind this is, of course, if you look at Africa, we have a very poor banking infrastructure north of our borders, number one. Secondly, we have a huge population of unbanked and underbanked people across Africa. World Bank estimates at least 60% of the adult population does not have access to formal banking services. Couple that with a high mobile phone penetration rate. 44% of the population have mobile phones, high digital literacy, access to technology at a low cost. And add all of this to the fact that from a demographics point of view, we have the largest emerging middle class in Africa. In fact, by 2025, we're probably going to have a population of 1.3 billion, the largest workforce in the world. Now, these are people that are going to require financial services. They're going to require loans, home loans, banking, student loans, bonds. And so they need to be brought into this financial net, and this is what is driving the demand for these financial services.
Right, and I mean, traditionally we've seen a little bit of a resistance in terms of investing in fintechs on the African continent. Tell us how that's changed, and really this obviously after the fact that the AFDB predicts that growth in sub-Saharan Africa continues to be the laggard. What is so attractive about the region?
So I think the driver for fintechs is really the demographics and the emergence of the middle class. And I think that's a different dynamic from the AFDB's stance. So what we're seeing is that the fintechs that we've certainly interviewed are touting significant returns, significant demand. They also have an opportunity to do social upliftment by bringing people into the financial inclusion net. The fact that they're using digital technology means it's easy and cheap for them to start up or to change their business or to scale. And finally, sustainability is key to these fintechs. And, if we look at the emerging and the middle class, we believe that that trend is going to continue for a long while. So that is certainly going to drive demand, we believe.
I'm glad you brought up the issue of yields and returns, and just perhaps give us a little bit more insight as to what an investor can look forward to in terms of gaining those significant returns.
So I think, some of the barriers to entry for these investors are you would do the same type of due diligence as you would any other type of business. You would look for political stability, you would look for good political governance, a good legal framework, a country that is open to business. So I think those are some of the key factors that drive where these investors actually go. Absolute values in terms of numbers, all we've been told by our investors that we've surveyed is that it is better than the average return on investment.
Right. One thing that you did mention briefly as well is the unbanked. And I think one of the issues that fintech have to deal with is financial inclusion and financial literacy. How are they navigating those particular issues?
So I think what they do is they are using mobile devices which are pervasive across Africa and continue to grow. So by 2025, we believe there'll be at least 1 billion mobile phones across Africa. So if you look at Kenya and the success story we have there, it's really the lack of infrastructure that has actually driven innovation and the creation of mobile payments. In fact, today, it is estimated that 45%, or an equivalent of 45% of the GDP of Kenya is driven through mobile payments. So it's really the digital device that is pervasive and being used by all classes of people to get financial inclusivity.
Let's talk about the outlook for investment within fintech on the African continent. It is increasingly becoming saturated. You've mentioned that there are about 262 that are currently operational, and I'm sure it's going to grow.
Yes.
Talk us through the outlook. It's not going to be difficult to be looking for that right fintech to invest in.
So I think predominantly, if you look at the traditional fintech services that we started off with, we're talking about payments and remittances. That's the most popular one. It then went on to insurance, and then it was savings and investing, lending and borrowing, wealth, property, and the list continues. So I think we've only touched the surface in terms of the types of services, the scale of the services, with the 1.3 billion population. So I believe that we certainly believe that this trend is going to continue in the foreseeable future.
So diversification is key here.
Absolutely.
No, absolutely. Ashwin, thank you very much for your time. I've been talking to Ashwin Gulab, who's a partner of financial services in Africa at EY.